follow along if you like. Let's see how long this takes. All right, well, first we're going to need an actual essay, but we're going to need a couple other things. We're going to need a title of some sort and then a name, all right, for example. But we're also going to need to know who our sources are and where we talk about them in the essay at this point. Every source is going to come up in a couple places. In text, we call these things in-text citations. You can see some examples of them here or here. And then at the end, in these things that we call the references. Here's the rule. If you list it in the references, it has to be in text too, and vice versa. All right, that way, if you list it here, we know, what you got from that particular source. All right. How do we write these things in APA? Well, you'll notice that there's two pieces of information. Last name, and then a year of publication. In APA, we're concerned with how relevant information is. So we focus on the year here. MLA, we focus on page numbers because it doesn't matter so much like what year Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet so much as, what page that quote in the play is from, right? Sometimes there's two authors. Well, then you put them both with a little ampersand. Sometimes there's like 12 authors. In that case, we do it like this. Miller et al. With a little period. Et al, that's Latin for and others. Et alia. All right? Oftentimes there's just, one author. Sometimes there's no author. Well, what do we do in those cases? If there might be an uploader, believe it or not, you're supposed to cite the uploaders of YouTube videos. That's who Faupsy1012 is, some illustrious individual who took a snippet of a BBC documentary and put it on YouTube for us. If there is no listed author, you go with the next piece of information you have, which is the title. And it might look something like this. Titles are long, so you only put the first word. All right. I've shared a chart that shows what to do if you are missing, author and title and other information in general. All right. Another thing we can note is that we only have to list the name one time. So there's basically two ways to do this. You put the statement and then you drop both pieces of information at the end, or we can put the name at the front according to so-and-so, according to Dutton, and then we just list the year. What we don't need to do is list, say, Dutton 2 times. Dutton says Dutton, between parentheses at the end. There's one other thing that's special here. Notice that unlike all these others citations, we've got a little reference to PARA. That's short for paragraph, right? And there's also something else that's unique about this compared to all the other statements here, is that we have a direct quote. That's the rule in APA. When you take a direct quote from somebody, we say what page it's on, or if the thing doesn't have pages, like TED Talks, you can't turn the page, right? Then you put paragraph, right? Well, a lot of websites just have paragraphs. All right? That's how these in-text citations work. And then we get to the references at the end. Now you'll notice all these references follow the same order of information. Last name, family name, comma, first initial. This is another difference with MLA. MLA, you put the full name, Dennis. APA, you only put the first initial. You know why that is? That's a way to combat gender discrimination in the sciences. Yeah. Last name, comma, first initial, then you get a period, and then we get, between parentheses again, we get the date. If you have a month you can throw in there too, good for you. Go ahead and do it. If not, that's cool too. All right? After each piece of information, we get a period. All right? Then we get the title. Notice a couple things about the title. One, italics. All right? Also, notice that we're not capitalizing words unless they are the first word of the sentence or a proper noun. All right? This is something that's different about the way we're doing our title up here. This is another little difference with MLA. Why do we do the titles like this? I don't know. That's the rule. If sometimes we can assume that these things are texts, but if you have a little other information you'd like to add in, like it came from a Kindle or it's a sculpture or a painting or whatever else, you can add that into. Finally, if you have the publisher, you can list it here at the end. Penguin Books. oftentimes we're just looking at things online. So then we get retrieved from, and then we just drop in the URL. All right. So again, you get name, date, title, and then like a publisher or URL. It's not that hard to remember, right? Finally, take a look. Can you recognize the order of information here? Why is Dutton first and Miller last? It's alphabetical. All right. If you have a long list of these things to alphabetize, let Word do it for you. You see this little A to Z button right here? All right. That way, you can save yourself a minute or two. All right. This will take a little bit of work, getting this stuff ready. But once we do, we can get down to the business of kind of quickly formatting our work. All right. First thing we might as well do is double space this thing. All right. The easiest way to do that is select the whole thing, Control A or Command A, and then you do Command 2. All right. Voila, I double spaced it. Guess what Command 1 does? Single space. All right. There. All right. Now we're going to need a cover page. Well, we've seen what goes on that thing. We've got a title, and we got a name, right? And these things are in the center. And then we need to say where we go to school, And we can tell people what the class is called, for instance. Something like that. All right. And then we can start thinking about some, other elements of document design. You might notice that I'm using a font called Calibri. APA, we're asked to use a particular font, Times New Roman. It's like the world's most vanilla font. All right. Well, we're getting there. Other elements of document design are margins. You may not know this, but a lot of different word processing programs have different standard margins. Let's see what's going on here. If we go up to Format, Document, you can see that we only have standard 1 inch on the tops and bottoms. Well, let's change that. All right. Now we're getting there. Okay. Notice that the title comes up in 2 places in this essay. Right on the cover page, but also on the first page. Again, that's centered. So let's push this down to the second page. All right. Okay. APA, there should be no blank lines between paragraphs. How do we know when a new paragraph is starting? We indent. All right, what could be more exciting than watching somebody indent? References, they get their own page too. All right, but we're doing pretty good here. Let's see, what's left to do? Oh yeah, there's that stuff that goes up at the top. The header, and those kinds of things. Well, here's the easiest way to do that. Pay attention here. There's a couple little tricky things that have to happen on this first page. You just kind of double click up at the top. All right. Now, one thing you may have noticed about the model is that the header on the first page is different than the headers on the other pages. This is one of these other strange little rules about APA that I don't know why we do this. I think the people who, in the American Psychological Association, I think they're like wizards and they live in a castle somewhere and they just kind of, have these ceremonies where they decide things like this. Anyways, see, this is how we do this. You see my little header and footer toolbar here? You can find, pretty much every word processing program has one of these things. You can have an option for a different first page. All right, and here's how we do this. First of all, we have to make sure we're in the same font here because life is challenging. All right, and we get this little thing, running head. This is lowercase. All right, why running head? Again, I don't know. And then we get into the title. Now, again, titles can be really long. You see these titles in science that are like 50 words long. We don't need to cram them all into our header. The header would be half the page. So the rule is you do the first first few words, all right? Yeah, as long as the first few words give you a couple content words, a couple nouns, a couple verbs, all right? All right. The other thing that while we're here on this first page, we're going to manually insert our first page number, all right? Now, if you notice here, we've got our sort of first page header, but we don't have it on the second page. That's okay. Now, since we've already got this clicked, we can just kind of do our own second page. Now, here, we don't need to put that running head thing, so we just get, again, we have to Make sure we get our right font. All right. Evolutionary origin. Oh, the evolutionary origin. All right. Okay. Let's see how we're looking here. Looking good here. Looking good here. Looking really good here. Let's add some page numbers. Well, don't go and manually type all those in, especially when you start writing long 10, 15-page papers. Insert them. Insert, and if you scroll down, you'll see page numbers. There we go. We don't want them at the bottom of the page, the footer. We want them in the header. And yeah, on the right side. Do we want the number of the first page? No, we don't. That's why we manually inserted that, because just things get, the machine will get confused sometimes. That's why we do that. How are we looking here? We're looking real good. Okay. Well, gee, there's only one last thing to do, and this is the tricky thing. Now, look at all these references here. It can be a little hard to know where one reference ends and the next one begins, right? Especially as this list goes on. So here's what we do. You highlight all your references. You might have like 2 pages of these things if you're doing a research paper. Highlight them all. You go up to Format, Paragraph, and now you look in the one box you've never looked in before. It's called Special. And you click on this thing called Hanging. All right? It should standard come up to a ½ inch. If not, tell it that you want a ½ inch. And then you click OK. And voila! Now it's easy to see where one reference ends and the next one begins. And that's how you do APA format. How long did that take?